He really wanted us to have that because I lived at the Sunset Marquis every time I got divorced, which was a lot of the time. 20 years have passed since Billy Bob Thornton and Angelina Jolie's quick relationship made waves around the world. Behind the crazy news stories and public shows of love, cracks started to show, so sometimes when people hear that you got a divorce, they think it was bad, but it's not. I had some really bad ones. What had this Hollywood couple really said that made them quit? Was it because of the fame or a change in their way of life, or was that just a sign of something more serious? Stay with us today, because 20 years later, Billy Bob Thornton finally says why he split up with Angelina Jolie. Angelina Jolie's childhood and rise to fame. Jon Voight, her father, was already well known as an actor. He won an Academy Award for his role in the movie Coming Home. The mother of Angelina, Marceline Bertrand, wanted to be an actor. She gave up her goals, though, to raise her two kids, Angelina and her brother James Haven. Living in Los Angeles put her in the middle of all the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, but things weren't always as easy as they seemed. Angelina's parents split up when she was a year old, and her mother raised her most of the time. The split would have long-lasting effects on Angelina, who later said she had a hard time getting along with her dad. She told them that she felt abandoned, and that hurt had shaped many of her life choices, including those about her relationships. Angelina knew a lot about movies, even though she had a single mom. Her mom took her to movie sets. That's where she first became interested in playing. Angelina wasn't like most kids in Hollywood. Her friends were mostly good at following the rules, but she was always the one who didn't. She was a little darker and rougher, and she always wore black and radiated gothic culture. She would be an outsider because of this, and people would sometimes avoid her. She had a hard time finding herself as a child and often felt like she didn't fit in. She started acting in small shows during this time and even went to the Lee Strasberg Theater Institute to take acting classes. The fact that she didn't get along with her father was just one of many problems she had as a child. Angelina had a lot of mental problems, like depressive episodes. She later said that when she was in her teens, she used drugs and did things that hurt herself. But Angelina's talented skills and strong determination did not let this phase stop her on her way to success. Angelina was starting to become known in Hollywood by the middle of the 1990s. She got her big break when she played the lead in the 1998 TV movie Gia, which was about supermodel Gia Karangi. The part won her a Golden Globe Award. The movie got great reviews, and reviewers said that her performance was honest and powerful. Hollywood began to notice her because she had that one thing that made every role she played more real and intense. Her life would never be the same after she played the lead role in Girl Interrupted in 1999. The Oscar for Best Supporting Actress went to Angelina Jolie for her role as the troubled Lisa Rowe. That part really cemented her place as one of the most promising actors of her time. With fame comes more attention, and Angelina's personal life quickly became something that most people were interested in. But this is around the time that Angelina's image as a wild child really took off. Many people saw her as brave and unreliable in a way that shocked the public and the press. She gives her brother a kiss on the lips. For years to come, this would lead to sensational talk. Angelina's rise continued even though she was involved in a lot of trouble. Her personal life added to her mystery. But her rebellion didn't end with those film-style temper tantrums. Angelina was a very daring girl who always wanted to be on the edge of things. She had always been the type to try new things, whether she was at work or in her personal life. Angelina's youth shaped her into the strong, passionate, and independent woman she is today. Having a hard time with who she was, being estranged from her father, and her quick rise to fame all affected how she approached her love life. She wanted to have deep relationships with other people, but she had trouble trusting and being trusted because of bad experiences in her youth. Angelina kept moving up in her job, but she started to move away from acting altogether. She got very active with helping people, going to war-torn countries, and adopting kids from all over the world. Her dedication to helping others changed her public image in a big way, and soon she was known as more than just an actress. She was also known as a fighter and humanitarian. She was definitely different from other people because she loved acting and was rebellious. She had been through a lot in her life before she met Billy Bob Thornton. They were quickly becoming one of the most talked about couples in Hollywood. But Angelina had to go through hard times in her personal life and successes at work to get there. While Angelina was making a name for herself in Hollywood, Billy Bob Thornton was living a life that didn't fit in this world. What did Thornton's strange life look like? How Billy Bob Thornton got to be in Hollywood and his early life. Billy Bob Thornton was born in Hot Springs, Arkansas on August 4th, 1955. This is a long way from the bright lights and fame of Hollywood. Billy Bob had a pretty normal childhood because he grew up in a small town. The roughness and simplicity of life in the country shaped him. William Raymond Thornton was his father. He taught history and coached basketball at a high school, and Virginia Roberta was his mother. That is why, from a very young age, he had been exposed to both the logical world of his father and the mysterious world of his mother. This strange mix was what made the person's personality so complicated. They were mostly practical, but also intellectual. The early years of Billy Bob's life were not easy. He grew up in a poor family, where there were no extras and everyone was expected to work hard. As a child, Billy Bob did strange jobs to help feed his family. He learned early on the importance of sticking with things even when things get hard. The blues, country, and rock and roll music he heard all over the South sparked his interest in music early in life. The dream of Billy Bob was to one day make a living as a musician. He learned himself how to play the drums and the guitar. However, getting out of an Arkansas small town isn't easy. Billy Bob worked a bunch of low-paying jobs after high school, from working in fast food to building roads. Playing in neighborhood bands, he tried to make it as a musician, but the path to success seemed impossible to find. In the late 1970s, he was so eager to follow his dreams that he left Arkansas and went to Los Angeles. Billy Bob was on his way to fame with just a bag and a guitar. He had a hard time in his early years in Hollywood. Like a lot of other new artists, Billy Bob had a hard time finding steady work. He slept in his car most nights and lived in bars. Strangers didn't do well in Hollywood, and Billy Bob must have felt like he was a fish out of water. He loved making songs, but he quickly learned that it was just as hard, if not harder, than acting. In the hopes that his creativity would lead to new opportunities, he chose to shift his attention to writing scripts and acting. When he co-wrote and acted in the crime thriller One False Move in 1992, it was his big break. It was the movie that finally got the attention of critics and audiences. The movie did well, and Bob Hope was finally given credit in Hollywood for the first time. But it wasn't until 1996 with Sling Blade that he really became known. Actually, Billy Bob did more than just write the script. He also directed and starred in the movie. Carl Childers, the mentally ill man he played, won him an Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay along with his Best Actor nod. Billy Bob's career took a big turn with Sling Blade. All of this made it clear that he was a very good actor and writer. And telling honest, moving stories became his defining trait. Being honest about who he was meant more to Billy Bob than any picture. He always talked about how much he hated the Hollywood machine, which was only interested in fame. He actually called out the industry's shallowness in interviews, which earned him both friends and critics. He was known as a rebel in Hollywood because he didn't play the game and would say what he thought instead of following the crowd. His training had a big effect on his relationships as well. Before he met Angelina, Billy Bob had been married several times. Each marriage had its own unique parts of his complicated personality. Billy Bob was known to be a man with a lot of energy. He often emotionally pulled away when his feelings were too much for him to handle. He showed a conflict between the need for independence and a close relationship. A strange love story starts here. Angelina Jolie and Billy Bob Thornton, who couldn't have been more different, fell deeply in love and millions of people watched them. When the story began, it was on the set of the 1999 movie Moving Tin. Angelina Jolie was in her 20s at this point and was still trying to figure out who she was in Hollywood. She played edgy parts and liked roles that let her rebellious side shine, but she wasn't the worldwide star she is now. Billy Bob Thornton, on the other hand, was 20 years older and had already made a name for himself in playing and directing. People saw him as tough, straightforward, and a bit of a Hollywood outcast. As soon as these two met, sparks flew. One of those times when everyone who saw the couple could feel how well they got along. They had such a strong emotional bond that they were close almost right away. Their attitudes, backgrounds, and even ages were all different, but that didn't matter. They may have been drawn to each other in the first place because of how different they were. Angelina and Billy Bob got married after only a few months of dating. In the year 2000, they ran away to Las Vegas instead of going to the usual Hollywood event that most celebrities choose to go to. They weren't even planning a big, fancy wedding for months. They chose instead to make their love public in a way that was true to them, quick, hot, and a little crazy. Many people were shocked because things were going so quickly, but they felt like it was right. Once upon a time, Billy Bob and Angelina lived out a love story straight out of a movie. Every other minute they were in the news, but not because of what they did in Hollywood. It was because of the intense and mostly strange shows of love they put on. A lot of people talked about how they wore jars of blood from each other around their necks. Yes, you heard that right. To them, it was a sign of how much they cared about each other and how they were linked. But everyone else thought it was weird, strange, and a little scary. This brave move made their friendship even more mysterious and interesting. They got into a fight to see if they could make it work. But in the end, their love wasn't enough. They both really didn't want to give up on the relationship they had built. But their disagreements and the constant pressure from the media started to hurt them badly. The constant attention of the public makes it impossible to deal with personal issues in secret. Every fight and disagreement was made worse by the harsh light of the paparazzi, which made their already tense relationship even worse. Even their strong bond couldn't save them in the end. After being married for 2 years, Billy Bob Thornton and Angelina Jolie shocked everyone again when they said they were getting a divorce. Fans were upset, and the reporters had to answer a lot of questions. What could have caused a love that looked so strong and unbreakable to end so quickly? At that point, that was still partly a secret, but as time has gone on, Billy Bob has been much more honest about what went wrong. And in the next chapter, we'll talk more about the problems they had and the reasons they broke up. What went wrong, though? Why did their passionate love story end in one of the strangest breakups in Hollywood history? There might be signs in the fact that this couple has been married before, especially Billy Bob Thornton. It got even stranger when Billy Bob Thornton met Angelina Jolie. He had been through a string of difficult and heavy marriages before they got together. When Angelina and Billy Bob's relationship started to heat up, Billy Bob had already been down the aisle 5 times, and each time had been hard on him. His relationship and marriage were both very intense and very rough. Without a doubt, these events changed how he felt about the organization and made him doubt all of his relationships to some degree. Billy Bob's first marriage was to Melissa Lee Gatlin in 1978. They had a daughter called Amanda, but their union did not last very long. The marriage ended in 1980, and it was Billy Bob's first time going through a divorce as an adult. When he and his first wife broke up, he had a lot of unresolved feelings about love and security. This set a pattern that he carried into his next marriages. Being in a relationship right away after the end of his first marriage was easy for Billy Bob. In 1986, he married actress Toni Lawrence, and right away they had another volatile but short-lived marriage. It seemed like most of Billy Bob's relationships had that spark and fire that Toni, who was an actor, had with him. Still, this marriage ended pretty fast, just like his first one. In 1988, after only 2 years together, they split up. Billy Bob had to deal with the weakness of marriage and the pain of a broken relationship again. Billy Bob got married for the 3rd time to Cinda Williams in 1990. He met her while working with her on the movie One False Move. They had great chemistry on TV, and it carried over into real life. But like his other marriages, it didn't last. But the stress in their personal lives was bigger than their love for each other, and in 1992, after only 2 years of marriage, the husband and wife split up. Because Billy Bob had been married 3 times before he turned 40, love started to seem like a pretty shallow thing to him. By the time he got married for the 4th time in 1993, Billy Bob was known for having quick relationships that often ended in sadness. The next person was Pietra Dawn Cerniak, a model and actor. They got married and had 2 boys, William and Harry. For a while, it looked like Billy Bob's personal life finally had some order, but the joy of becoming a dad couldn't keep his marriage from falling apart. They split up in 1997 after being married for 4 years. In yet another failed marriage, Billy Bob was the emotional loser. He had asked for a divorce for the 4th time. After each split, he was a little more cautious and unsure of his worth in a committed relationship. Even though he loved his kids, his life events made him think that there was something fundamentally wrong with the way he chose to approach marriage. He started to think that he wouldn't be a good husband or be able to keep someone for a long time. Billy Bob's 5th marriage was to Angelina Jolie in the early 2000s. She was the woman he met and fell in love with. His thoughts about love were so much more moderate by this point. Billy Bob had been married 5 times before, so he was used to jumping right into heated relationships that would end in divorce. When he was younger, he was afraid of the emotional cost of commitment. The baggage from each of his past marriages must have affected how he treated his relationship with Angelina. His early marriages taught him that love was fragile, even when it was passionate and full. With each divorce, he had more and more questions about whether he could ever find true love. Billy Bob had been through all the ups and downs of relationships many times before Angelina came into his life. The scars from those times were still fresh. He was more careful and guarded in his heart because he had been hurt and caused hurt to others. There are talks where Billy Bob has said that he doesn't feel good in relationships. He said that these fears of failing and questions about love were still there when he was married. Many of the breakups he had and then blew up with Angelina, his wife. He could never get his mind around the fact that he wanted love but had to keep his marriage together. When Billy Bob married Angelina, he brought his darkest past with him. Even though he was deeply in love with Angelina, he still had a lot of baggage from past relationships. Being with her did not answer all of his questions about love and marriage. He was always in situations that were too intense and overwhelming, and then he would distance himself from them in a way that he couldn't break. There were going to be problems in his present that would cause his relationship with Angelina to end. You could tell Billy Bob had been through a lot of ups and downs before he married Angelina, but ghosts from the past wouldn't let him be. His heart was as heavy as a stone with emotional baggage from past marriages. Even though he worked hard to make things work, his fears and doubts kept him from being close to Angelina. Because of bad experiences in the past, he was afraid of failing, which was one of the main reasons he finally chose to end the marriage. Angelina Jolie had been through the best and worst of marriage before she married Billy Bob Thornton. Being in relationships since she was young, her past relationships taught her what love, commitment, and freedom mean to her. She married Johnny Lee Miller, a British actor, for the first time in 1996. In 1995, they met on the set of Hackers. Their relationship was very short, going from being lighthearted to serious very quickly. They fell deeply in love, even though she was only 20 years old at the time. She was known for getting married in black leather pants and a white shirt with Johnny's name written in her own blood on it. It was an all-encompassing act that showed how serious Angelina is and how much she loves everything or nothing. But even though they were very in love, their marriage with Angelina and Johnny only lasted 3 years. By 1999, they were no longer together, but they were still friendly. In later talks, Angelina said nice things about Johnny and said the main reason they broke up wasn't because they didn't love each other, but because they were at different points in their lives at the time. Angelina wasn't sure where she fit in the world yet, and she knew that Johnny and her would never be able to hold together. The split was friendly, and they didn't hold a grudge against each other. It wasn't long after Angelina's first marriage that she got married again. She got married to star Billy Bob Thornton in 2000. The two had a fiery and unusual relationship that made Hollywood go crazy. Wild and independent, she lived her life on her own terms. Finally, she found the right match in Billy Bob, who also liked to push the limits. They loved each other with a lot of emotion and physical contact. Of these, the jars of blood they wore around their necks were one of the most well-known examples. This got them a lot of attention from the media, which added to the idea that they were a passionate and strange pair. Because of this, Angelina's past marriages have had a big effect on how she thinks about love and loyalty. She learned something about time from her first marriage to Johnny Lee Miller. She learned that love doesn't last forever. She went through the highs and lows of a passionate relationship with Billy Bob. That being said, she learned that their personalities and life paths were not compatible, which can break up even the closest pairs. How could such a sweet love story have ended? Why Billy Bob Thornton really chose to get a divorce? After 20 years of rumors, Billy Bob Thornton finally answered a question that everyone has had since his public breakup with Angelina Jolie. Why did he decide to end a relationship that seemed to be full of fire and intensity? In an honest interview that doesn't happen very often, Billy Bob talked about very personal reasons for the divorce. The real reason wasn't as easy as everyone thought. He did it because he was deeply insecure and afraid of not being good enough. Living in the shadow of one of Hollywood's biggest stars also put a lot of pressure on him. Behind the passionate front they put on for everyone to see, fishermen were beginning to show themselves. However, Billy Bob himself says that the biggest problem is not that they don't love each other or that they fight, but that he feels like he will never be as good as Angelina. Billy Bob has said in interviews that one reason he and Angelina Jolie got a divorce was because he didn't feel like he could live up to the expectations that came with marrying her. He said, "I just wasn't comfortable in that world." He was talking about Angelina's exciting public life. That being in the spotlight put too much stress on Billy Bob. There was something about Angelina that made everyone want to be close to her. Billy Bob didn't like all this attention because he thought of himself as private and never wanted to be the center of attention. He said that in Angelina's life he felt more like a friend than an equal partner. He worried that he wasn't good enough for her as she became more famous. However, Billy Bob's choice to end the marriage wasn't just because of his fame. Instead, there was a hugely important reason why their goals had become so different. Angelina really wanted to use her fame to make the world a better place. She wanted to push for causes like refugee rights and world health, because humanitarian work was becoming a big part of who she was. That was something Billy Bob liked about her, but he knew he didn't belong there. He was happy with just acting and making songs, without the stress of having a global audience. He knew he couldn't keep up with the way Angelina's life was going because their paths were going in different directions. Billy Bob's lifelong problems with his own mind were another factor in his choice. He has talked about his anxiety and sadness, which makes it even harder for him to deal with the stresses of being in a public relationship. He felt overwhelmed by how well known they were together and worried that he wouldn't be able to keep his emotions stable enough to stay in the marriage. Because of these mental health problems and his feelings of not being good enough for Angelina, he finally decided that stopping the marriage was best for both of them. Even though they had chosen to part ways, Billy Bob made it clear that they were not angry with each other. He said nice things about Angelina, like how she was a great person and how she had given him some of the most important experiences of his life. That his choice to divorce her had nothing to do with who she was or how much they loved each other. There was a lot of trouble inside him, and he knew he couldn't stay in a situation where he felt so out of place. They were able to keep a respectful friendship over the years. They stayed in touch from time to time while each went about their own lives. Where are the fans of Once Upon a Time now? Where are they now? Since they split up 20 years ago, Billy Bob Thornton and Angelina Jolie have gone their separate ways in life. Angelina married Brad Pitt and had a big family. This helped her become one of Hollywood's biggest stars. She has been acting, but she has also become a global supporter of human rights and humanitarian issues. This is adding to her legacy in ways that aren't related to acting. Bill Bob, on the other hand, chose to live a quieter and less public life. He kept working on his singing and acting after the breakup, but he tried to stay away from all the fuss that was going on around Angelina. His easygoing nature made it easier for him to keep working in movies and on TV at a pace that was comfortable for him. They're not angry at each other, even though they're not together anymore. In fact, Billy Bob has said nice things about Angelina, like how they still talk to each other sometimes and how much he respects her. Even though their lives were different, he has called her a great lady and said that there was no bad blood between them. Billy Bob doesn't feel bad about the romance or the breakup. Both have moved on, and their respect for each other has grown stronger over time. Even though it might not last forever, that love story of desire and growth is one of the most interesting in Hollywood. While it may seem like a long time ago, it's clear that they had a special bond and will always remember their trip together. What do you think about Billy Bob Thornton? Please tell us what you think in the space below. Don't forget to scroll down, leave a review, and subscribe. Click on the movie you see now to see more like this. Thanks for seeing. We'll see you next time.